welcome to a special Sunday edition of Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. We have got a full show ahead, but first, a big blizzard is setting its sights on the Northeast. Meteorologist Adam Klotz has the latest.
Yeah, this is a big one, and we're targeting the Northeast, large area now, really stretching from Virginia all the way up into portions of Maine. Here you see it, and now the pink color, that is now a warning, which means a little bit more severe. And then I can take you a little bit tighter. Look at New York City. All of this green, that's a blizzard watch. You get that when you start to get conditions where it'd be a whiteout. Very heavy snow, very strong winds. That's something we're looking forward to coming late Tuesday, really, I guess, Monday night into Tuesday. I'm going to time that out for you in just a minute. Here's what it looks like on our satellite and radar right now. Two systems are going to come together to make this one happen. There it is, a little bit of a low pressure system just moving off the coast. Doesn't look like a lot now. That's going to lift its way up the coast. On top of that, we've got some cold air and some snow moving through portions of Iowa, stretching up towards Wisconsin and back into Minnesota. Those two systems are going to combine, and that is where we're going to see this near blizzard condition working its way up the Northeast by really late tomorrow, getting you into Tuesday. So here's your hour-by-hour forecast. You can kind of time this out with your timestamp up there in the corner. Snow moving through the Midwest on Monday night, really getting into early Tuesday morning. Here I am taking you to very early Tuesday morning. That's when you begin to see some of this moisture moving into the Northeast. And yeah, this could be some very heavy snowfall. With that, winds 50 to 70 miles an hour. So this is going to be a big one kind of clearing off for us on Wednesday. I'm going to take you in here. These are some snowfall accumulations. You start to see these pinker colors. That's getting up to 2 feet of snow, maybe a foot of snow in New York City. The same stretching down to Philadelphia. So this is a really big system. And if you kind of want an idea, maybe give you some reference of how big they've been in the past, well, I can take you back. These are the highest snowfall records ever in New York City. Well, just back in 2016, we had 26 inches. I'm not sure we're going to get there, but I think a good 18 to 2 feet of snow spread around the Northeast here. So it's going to be a big one, Judge.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, we're going to be busy. We're going to be here a lot the next couple of days.
All right, thanks so much. And President Trump wants Republicans to come together on the party's Obamacare replacement. What's keeping some, though, in the GOP from getting on board? Joining me now, Republican Congressman from New York, Chris Collins. All right, good evening, Congressman. Now,
good to be with you, Jeanine.
Good to be with you, Congressman. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds here. All I know is this so far. The Republicans want to repeal, I think, and replace, although I'm not sure. And then we've got this Freedom Caucus, and then we've got the Democrats, and then we've got the guys in the middle. And at the end of the day, what we need is the repeal and, I think, replacement. So you've got the replacement ready, right?
Yes, we've been working. I was actually in a 27-hour markup on Wednesday and Thursday. And that moved forward the repeal and replace piece that's now going to our budget committee and then rules, and it'll be on our House floor within the next little bit over 2 weeks, then on to the Senate. And we're trying to get it on the president's desk before the Easter break.
Okay.
So there's a lot to be done.
Okay, but let me ask you this. You have the Freedom Caucus, and these are the most conservative who don't want any fines, any taxes. They don't want this expanded Medicare, or I should say Medicaid. And yet you're going to need them in order to get this thing passed in the House. How do you convince them? Is this bowling and pizza working, or what do you do? How do you get them on your side?
Well, here's what we know. We need 218 votes. There's 237 House members right now. We're going to get no help from the Democrats. So the individuals, their definition of perfect is not necessarily everyone else's definition of perfect. This is a good bill. And as I would say, a Republican from New York and New Jersey is not the same as a Republican from Texas and Florida. They've got to understand this. If we don't get this done, I'm not sure what would happen next year, Judge, in our midterm elections if we don't deliver on this key promise by the president and by all of us who campaigned. So our caucus, the Freedom Caucus as well, have just got to swallow hard and understand perfect can't be the enemy of good. We have to move this over to the Senate. We have to do it in the next 2 weeks. And we're counting on them as part of our team to not upset this apple cart, because we're not going to give them their definition of perfect. It just is not going to happen.
So this is Paul Ryan's bill. So what does Paul Ryan do to convince those guys who were digging their heels in and saying, look, we got elected as these conservative, financially conservative, tax, whatever they are, hawks? How does he convince them?
Well, we've had meeting after meeting where he has stood up and he said, we're on a team. We are in the majority. We're not in the minority anymore. We don't have Obama as our president. It's time to understand the American public has trusted the Republicans with the House, the Senate, and the White House. And we have to act, in a manner that the public is expecting to get things done and not just to argue about them. So it's going to be a showdown. There's no two ways about it.
Right.
There's going to be a showdown, and we are counting on our Freedom Caucus members to do the right thing for our party because, again, woe be our party come midterm elections if we're going to the polls and we didn't deliver on health care or tax reform.
Is the argument that the individual mandate and the employer mandate being eliminated, should that be enough to convince them to come to your side?
Yeah, there's no question, Judge. All of a sudden now, those people that were working part-time jobs at 39 hours that got cut to 26 hours can go back to a 39-hour part-time job. Companies that want to grow beyond 49 employees to 55, 65 employees, they can now do that without a penalty. And the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of penalties, taxes, and fees, when they're gone, are going to be a jump start to our economy. This is what we're trying to do to get the economy moving, create jobs, and eliminating the individual mandate and the employer mandate should be enough for our Freedom Caucus to understand just how good this is.
Okay, what kind of horse trading goes on? I mean, what do you guys have to leverage other than, a stare down or do the right thing, which for some reason, that maybe it's the prosecutor in me or the cynicism in me doesn't convince me is going to do the job. What do you leverage?
Well, I mean, there has been some talk, and I don't know that it's going to go anywhere, about the cutoff date on the current expansion plan. Instead of it being January 1st of 2020, perhaps it could be January 1st of 2019. There's things of that sort. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but there are some tweaks. There's always a few tweaks. Perhaps when does a particular fee or tax roll off? But it's not going to be anything major. I mean, the deductible or the refundable tax credits to help the lower income people buy them, we have to have those.
Yeah.
Some form of expansion has got to move forward. 31 states expanded Medicaid. They're going to have to cut the federal piece from 90% down to whatever the states normally paid. Let's call it 50% in New York, 73% in West Virginia.
So more deal making.
There's not much, but no, there's really not much more we can do. On our 27-hour debate on the bill, not one single amendment, not one was passed.
All right. Congressman Collins, thanks for joining us tonight.
Very good to be with you, Judge.
Now to WikiLeaks and its release of internal CIA files that detail the agency's ability to hack into your smartphones and smart TVs. Joining me now is Kerry Cordero, former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security. All right, Kerry, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Justice. Now, one of the things that we found out this week was that thousands of documents, as described by Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, are now apparently available or visible and that we thought were private. And unfortunately, after 2010 and Chelsea Manning, I think most of us just assume that information within the intelligence community was being protected. And then with Snowden, we just assumed everything was being tightened up after that in 2013 with the NSA. And I think that you, having particular experience in this area more than most, would understand that this kind of information being available or being, vulnerable to hacking is extremely dangerous to us and needs to be more protected. What is the status of all of this?
Well, thanks for having me on. Absolutely. This has been a continual problem. You mentioned this week's release by WikiLeaks included over 8,000 documents that they purport to include information about very classified and sensitive CIA hacking abilities. And it does come on the heels of about 7 years now worth of high-profile, either unauthorized disclosures, leaks, or hacks of either sensitive or classified information that the government retains.
And why isn't the government in a position to protect this information? Now, I understand, Carrie, that if someone walks out the door with information and we can't figure out who we can, expect to, keep a confidence and who we can't. But when someone from outside the government is able to hack information inside of the government, that's a real problem.
It is. Well, each of these cases represents a different type of problem.
Right.
So if you look at the 2010 Manning case, the 2013 Snowden case, and then according to at least the most recent reports today, even in the Wall Street Journal regarding this latest CIA case, these are potentially insider threat issues.
Right.
In other words, individuals who have access and who are trusted individuals, in some cases government contractors, who then steal that information and facilitate through WikiLeaks in this case and in the 2010 case, their public exposure.
Well, Congressman Trey Gowdy actually said something like it's no more than 30 people that we have to look at in the FBI and the NSA that could be responsible for this, and we have to use whatever powers that we have legally to, confront them and get this information from them. But, Carrie, I want to quickly, before we run out of time, discuss the fact that, there was a time when, we kind of put an end to a lot of this, but then after 9/11, we kind of understood, as James Comey has made so clear, that there really isn't any privacy anymore. And so that tension between privacy and national security isn't as tense as it used to be. We've kind of recognized that we don't have privacy. But now, with the re-upping of that Section 702 of the FISA Act, is that now more in jeopardy because of what WikiLeaks has done? Are Americans now going to say, well, I don't want to re-up this now? I mean, we're in too much danger.
Well, we do have an expectation of privacy, but FISA Section 702, so that refers to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and that's a legal authority that has been in place since 2008. It's set to expire at the end of this year. Congress is having a legislative debate over whether to reauthorize it. On one hand, multiple senior national security officials of both parties have said that it's a very productive and important legal authority. On the other hand, this issue of the security of information really is one that the government has to address.
Right.
If they're going to retain sensitive information, they have to have an ability to protect it.
Do you think we'll ever get there, Carrie?
Well, there's certainly a lot of work that can be done between the government and the private sector to improve information. Both the government and private sector have insider threat programs, but the government has to be able to assure the American public that if it's going to collect sensitive information, that it has the ability to protect it.
Okay, Carrie Cordero, thanks so much for being with us again.
Thanks.
All right. And lots of questions about whether Russia had any involvement in this presidential election. Does, though, the United States meddle in other countries' elections? Joining me now is retired CIA operations officer and chief of station, Sam Faddis. All right, Sam, I kind of got sick and tired of hearing, Russia is undermining our democracy and they're meddling in our elections. So I said to myself, have we ever done anything like this? And as someone who is involved in covert operations himself, Sam, have we ever meddled in other countries' elections?
Without question. It's covert action pursuant to a finding from the president. Absolutely.
All right. And I understand in my research that there are something like, I don't know, I think it was well over 100 times in the last 60 years. Does that sound about right to you?
Sounds low to me, but
Sounds low to you?
I'll go with that number.
All right, let's talk about the fact that we have involved ourselves in other countries' elections without getting into people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. How would we do that?
Well, it's a form of covert action. You have to do it pursuant to authority from the President of the United States. You could do it in a million ways. You could pay people. You could You could hack databases. You could threaten action if people don't do what we want them to. I mean, there's an endless series of techniques we could use.
All right. Now, let me ask you or posit a hypothetical question as it relates to Russia and all these claims about their undermining our democracy. If you were to analyze, based upon your experience in covert operations and actually running large-scale covert ops in this exact kind of thing, would you say that sitting opposite a Russian ambassador in open daylight or emails going into a building from Russia are an example of the Russian government covert operation in trying to undermine an election? Is that how it's done?
No, that's not how it's done. That's a nonsensical suggestion, and frankly, I think that's probably evidence that there isn't anything untoward going on. And let's be clear: the Russians are masters at this kind of thing. They know exactly what they're doing. And no, it would be done in the dead of night, and you wouldn't see any evidence of it. It would not happen in the middle of a Senate office building in broad daylight.
So all of this, I mean, so you and other people like you in the CIA who've done these covert ops, I mean, you're sitting at home laughing at all of these claims that Russia has interfered with the election because you know how they do this.
Right. I have seen absolutely nothing of which I'm aware that suggests that there was any Russian effort that actually manipulated this election. That they stole data, that's one thing.
All right. Let me ask you, give me examples of when and how the United States, specifics, has interfered with certain elections in other countries.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and they're going to, of necessity, be kind of dated for obvious reasons.
Right.
But we staged a coup in Guatemala a number of decades ago where we overthrew the government of Guatemala. We replaced the elected government of Iran with the Shah in 1953. We have done this and literally deposed leaders and replaced them with people who would do what we wanted them to.
And as recently as a couple of years ago, there's reports that State Department money went into Israel and the Obama administration to work against Prime Minister Netanyahu in his election.
Right. In recent years, there's been a whole bunch of State Department programs where they fund NGOs in a lot of places. Israel, as you noted, Egypt as well,
right,
with the express purpose of influencing the government, the election, who forms the government.
Interesting. But shock that we would do something like this. Sam Faddis, thank you for your service, and thanks for being on Justice with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. And House Intelligence giving the president a Monday deadline for proof of wiretapping. Will he explain his bombshell allegations? My political panel on deck for a lively debate. Next. Plus, did you miss my open last night? Shame on you. But you're in luck. We'll give you a second look. Welcome back to Justice. Let's bring in our political panel, former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush, Brad Blakeman, and former Ohio Congressman and Fox News contributor Dennis Kucinich. All right. Okay. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. I want to start. Good evening. Well, good evening. I want to start with pretty much where I was talking to Kerry Cordero, who had worked in the NSA, and I'm fascinated by Congressman Kucinich's statement that when he was a congressman, as an American citizen, obviously, he had a conversation with someone from Libya. His conversation was wiretapped, and not only was it wiretapped, but a newspaper ended up having it and played it for him several years later, and he never found out how they got it. Of course, they don't have to say what their source is, and he could never find out how that happened. Tell us about that, Congressman.
Well, your account is correct. I was in my congressional office in a phone call with a Libyan leader. The call had been approved by the House General Counsel. I was asking questions. 2 years after I left office, I was informed by the Washington Times that they had a tape that they wanted me to listen to. It turned out a tape of that conversation, which was given to them I concluded, by an intelligence agency.
But they had no right to do that.
Well, they don't. But let me tell you something, Judge. Before I left office, I just want to show you and your viewers something. Before I left office, I submitted a series of Freedom of Information requests to intelligence agencies.
Oh,
this is
God.
And some of them came back, but a number of them did not. 5 years later, I'm still waiting for an answer to my FOIA request from the intelligence agencies.
You see, that's frightening. I mean, what does the ordinary person do when they ask for freedom of information? And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Hillary Clinton's State Department when all the newspapers, would ask for information and they kept saying, we have nothing, we have nothing. I mean, it just flies in the face of everything that we're supposed to do and freedom of information. But it not only is illegal, but that they leaked it is even more illegal, and that's what's so disconcerting about this.
That's exactly right. It was the tap, which was first a violation of separation of powers, but then the leaking of it was intended, I think, to try to influence government policy. Now, let me just tell you something else.
Yeah,
it's very much concerning.
We got to move it, though.
If they can do this to a member of Congress, and they did it to, and the CIA hacked into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computers in a minute. If they can do that to members of Congress, what hope does a private citizen have?
Let me go to Brad. Now, Brad, you say WikiLeaks is a cancer on American intelligence and safety. My concern is, as I spoke to Kerry Cordero, is shame on us.
Absolutely.
That number one, that they can hack into it, and shame on us again that we can't identify who in intelligence is leaking this crap out.
There's no doubt about it. But look, I think what happened to the congressman is systemic to the problem that we're having in America today. We have 17 separate and distinct intelligence services.
Well, Obama did that before he left.
Right. They're in competition with each other. Not only that, they withhold information, they leak, they point fingers when one is caught. I happen to think that Donald Trump should ask for an audit, complete audit, by the executive branch and lead the way in cleaning this up. Judge, it is imperative that if others can get this information, third parties and contractors as well need to be scrutinized as why we have so many independent outside contractors who are protecting America's most vital secrets. An audit is needed, a determination of what intelligence services are needed, pare it back, and get control once and for all over our most guarded secrets.
You know, when you think about it, Chelsea Madden, Snowden, Julian Assange, I mean, how many times do we have to, convince ourselves that it's not tight enough? And Dennis, that one of the things that Brad says is WikiLeaks never releases materials on the Russians or Chinese. What does that mean?
I'm not sure what it means.
What does it mean, Brad?
I'll tell you what it means is we're a target. And I happen to believe that there are forces behind WikiLeaks that are adversaries to the United States and has WikiLeaks doing their dirty work for them. Why is it so easy to get American intelligence and not easy to get Russian or North Korean or Chinese intelligence?
Well, maybe they're smarter than we are in terms of securing their intelligence. Absolutely. What do you think, Dennis?
Judge, I'll tell you where I come in on all this. Our Constitution is being shredded. No American is safe from the government right now, which because of the Patriot Act, can reach into individuals' private conversations. Under Section 702 of FISA, anybody can be vulnerable to claims that they're doing improper business with foreign agents. This is wrong. We have to regain our basic freedoms here, which are under attack by our own government.
But you know what? Even Jim Comey said there's no privacy anymore, and I'm not sure that going after 702 of the FISA is the way to resolve this problem. Brad, do you have any before we go that on the re-upping of 702?
Yeah, I think right now we let the inmates run the asylum, and it's the executive branch and Congress that should be dictating how our intelligence is given out, created, and by whom it's being worked upon. And unless we get a handle on that, shame on us. But we should never surrender our rights and say, well, this is the new normal. It should never be the new normal.
All right. Brad Blakeman, Dennis Kucinich, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And your second look at my opening statement up next. Stay with us. President Trump wants his own U.S. attorneys in place, but not everyone is going willingly. Here's another look at my opening statement from last night. So, 46 United States attorneys have been asked by the newly elected president of the United States to tender their resignations. So what? That's what I said. So what? But to hear it from the left, you would think this is just another affront to democracy and our way of life by the Trump administration. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't throw in the Russians. Let me give it to you straight. This is a non-story. It is not unusual for any new administration to seek the dismissal of political appointees, especially when a new party comes in. United States attorneys are political appointees who serve at the pleasure of the president. In 1993, Bill Clinton's administration sought the resignation of all sitting United States attorneys appointed by Republican President George Bush in one fell swoop. The Obama administration also replaced all United States attorneys but one from the Bush 43 administration. Now, for those of you who might be new to politics, a quote from President Barack Obama: "Elections have consequences." Or you might be more familiar with the old adage, "To the victor belong the spoils." But why go quietly and with dignity when you can create chaos? The United States attorney from New York's Southern District, without a doubt the premier district in the nation, digs in his heels and refuses to resign, absurdly claiming he won't resign and insisting the president fire him. Say what? Do you really think you have a claim to this office? Take a listen to Preet on November 30th when he rushed to the cameras at Trump Tower.
The president-elect asked, presumably because he's a New Yorker and is aware of the great work that our office has done over the past 7 years, asked to meet with me to discuss whether or not I'd be prepared to stay on as the United States Attorney, to do the work as we have done it, independently, without fear or favor for the last 7 years. We had a good meeting. I said I would absolutely consider staying on.
Folks, what are the operative words? The president asked if he'd be prepared to stay on, not please stay on. And his response was he would consider it. Now, he then goes on to say he was asked to stay on and he agreed, but we really don't know what was said. That's his version, not the Trump team's. And now, when 47 have already automatically stepped aside because they know the protocol, the remaining 46 are asked to tender their resignations. Bahara comes out, refuses to resign, and can't believe that this would apply to him, and says Donald Trump will have to fire him, as if he's got a hold on that office. And Preet, men bigger than you, gentlemen, have left when new administrations came in. Giants like Whitney Seymour, Robert Fisk, Rudy Giuliani, James Comey, David Kelly. So since this happens all the time, what's the fuss? All day today, the Trump haters have claimed any change interrupts ongoing investigations and prosecutions and ultimately jeopardizes Lady Justice, that especially in offices where public corruption cases are being tried, justice is at stake. As if only one man carries a whole office. Cut it out. Do you really think that this is the first time in the history of this country that a prosecutor, federal, state, local, town, village, hamlet, has been replaced by another one? What the hell do we do when they die? Just give up? Here's my question. No one but Preet Bharara used the word fire. All were asked for resignations. Who knows? Maybe some would have been asked to stay on. And just moments before we came on air, I found out 2 were, even though they tendered their resignations. But because Preet has such a huge ego, because he thinks he's so all-important that he couldn't believe such a request could possibly apply to him, he ramped it up and dared the President of the United States to fire him. So what do you think happened? Lady Justice is winking under her bandages. And Donald Trump did what only Donald Trump can do so well. He said, "You're fired." Up next, married priests? Pope Francis is considering it. A shortage of priests has been a problem for the Catholic Church for some time now. But Pope Francis now says he's open to the idea of letting married men become priests. Joining me now to discuss is Father Gerald Murray. Father, good to have you back on Justice. Now, I have to tell you, I'm Catholic. I went to Catholic schools, the whole thing. And when I heard this, I was flabbergasted. I didn't even call my mother because I didn't want to hear her, because I know how she must feel. Now, does the Pope have the right to change this?
He does if he wants to.
Why? Where did this come from?
Well, this idea has been around for a number of decades. After the Second Vatican Council, there was a lot of pressure to get rid of priestly celibacy. And really, it's part of a modernizing movement in the church that was rejected by Pope Paul VI and John Paul II, Pope Benedict. Pope Francis now is opening a door, which I'm afraid is not the right door. That's not really where we want to go.
So you don't support it?
Not at all. I like what we have now.
But you know what? If I have to tell you with all due respect, Father, you know, if I'm a priest and I practiced celibacy for all those years, and then this guy comes in, he's married, he's got a wife, a kid, he does whatever, I say to myself, why did I do this all these years?
Some might say that. I'm very happy the way I am. I love being a priest, and I don't mind not having a wife and kid. I would have gotten married if I didn't become a priest. But I don't think you want to upset the people of God, the church in general, by saying what we valued for 1,000+ years of priestly celibacy is now going to become cast aside. The shortage of priests has to do with a lack of religious practice, not the fact that priests are married, can't be married.
Okay.
So we have to increase religious practice, get people praying, go to church, all that good stuff. That's how you solve the problem.
So what would it take for the church to finally say, and by the way, I'm reading about this, and it says that already there are as many as 100 Catholic priests in the United States that are married. Who said they could be married?
Well, the Pope, Pope John Paul II made an exception for Episcopalian ministers who wanted to become Catholic priests, and they were married. They allowed them to be ordained.
Why?
Because they wanted to respect the fact that they were serving the Episcopalian Church as a minister, and now they want to serve the Catholic Church as a priest. It was an exception.
Why didn't they stay Episcopalian?
Well, because they believe the Catholic Church is the true church, and they wanted to be part of it.
What took them so long, now that they're married?
I'm not going to question how long it took. I'm glad they converted. You know, that's my point of view. But no, the fact is there are some married priests. We have married priests in Ukraine and Lebanon. There are places where married clergy have existed.
Well, I know Greek Orthodox. I have an uncle who's Greek Orthodox who was married. But this is Catholic.
No, the Catholic Church in the West has had priestly celibacy for most of its history, and it's a fruitful and good thing. Remember, Christ wasn't married.
I was just going to say, where did this all start?
It all started with Jesus. Jesus praised those who gave up marriage for the sake of the kingdom, and as a priest, we're supposed to represent Christ. The most effective way is by representing him in all aspects of our life, our teaching, our way of living, and the fact that we don't have a wife. We're totally at the disposition of the church.
You know where it goes from here?
Tell me.
I'm going to tell you. If married men can become priests, you know, then you have the wives, and I was reading that some of them actually, you know, counsel couples together, the wife, then you're going to have gay priests, then you're going to have women priests, you know, what? I mean, equal rights, right? I mean, where's the Catholic Church going?
Put it this way, I am not a supporter of changing this rule. I think the celibate clergy is one of the glories of the Catholic Church. This allowed our missionaries to go out to the whole world and preach the gospel, not worrying about what their kids were doing back at home.
Yeah,
you know, so this is where we should stay.
All right, Father Murray, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Good to see you again. My thanks to the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, where I received the Patriot Award this past week. And Get ready for an all-new face of justice, You the Jury, on the big broadcast Fox that premieres April 7th at 9 p.m. on the big Fox. Remember, friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Judge_Jeanine.